Find out which states are showing good job numbers and which ones are showing not so great numbers. How many Americans are still considering long-term unemployment after benefits expired. Why unemployment statistics might not be totally accurate. And why job creation might be slowing down. Hey everybody, it's Andrew Cartwright here. Hope you're having a satisfying Sunday. Here's your unemployment update. The number of Americans applying for the first-time jobless claim reached an all-time low, which was good news. The number of filing are at 293,000, the lowest since last March, which was when, not this past March, but the March, the March I'm talking about, just as the pandemic was beginning. That's good news. Not every state of the territory painted the same picture, though. Take California, Puerto Rico, and Illinois, for example. California has an unemployment rate of, get this, 3.3%. You wouldn't think so, right? With all the restrictions. Also, Puerto Rico has 4.3%, and Illinois is 4.4%. So they are in the running for the records. These numbers are definitely the highest. Now, let's look at the lowest insurance unemployment rate. South Dakota, right? You're like, wait a minute, I thought 3.3 was great. Yep, nope. South Dakota has an unemployment rate of 0.2%. That means pretty much everybody's employed, except for, your grandma and your grandpa. The national lowest is Alabama, is 0.3%, and Idaho, Nebraska, North Dakota, and Utah all sit at 0.4%. Less than 1% of people. Is that unbelievable? If you're in South Dakota, or if you're in North Dakota, let me know. Are you unemployed? Are these numbers accurate? Mark Hamrick, senior economist, analyst at Bankrate, said, quote, at this time, when a record number of workers are quitting their jobs, we're remaining that the same businesses are still failing as the pandemic takes a toll, resulting in unexpected jobs. With so many jobs available and opportunities to work remotely at least some of the time, the good news is that workers stand a reasonable chance of improving their employment situation, including better pay and working conditions. Clearly, that's what many want, end quote. States like California and Hawaii are amongst the most expensive to live in, while not having the greatest job market. So after losing their job, a lot of people, a lot of citizens in these states are still having to rely on the unemployment insurance to get by. Many, if you follow YouTube or look around or TikTok, you see people are leaving California. A lot of people are leaving California for Texas and Nevada and Arizona. Let's not forget that this is actually a bit misleading. Without a side-by-side comparison of where they are, it's easy to forget how much progress they've made. Hawaii insured unemployment rate topped off at 23.5%, almost 25%, 1 out of 4 people back in May, and has dropped a full 20.6% points, right? That's 20%. That means, instead of 1 out of 4, it's like next to nobody. California had its unemployment rate shoot up to 27.8% in April, almost a third of people in that state with 40 million people, right? So in most states, we are seeing recovery, incredible recovery. It might seem slow and unemployment benefits are still not necessarily very necessary for the time being, but don't let these numbers discourage you from if you live in one of these areas and you're not employed. Meanwhile, a third of jobless Americans are still considering long-term federal benefits that these workers unfortunately ended more than a month ago. They're still considering those long-term benefits. That means 2.7 million people were long-term unemployed, according to the U.S. Bureau of Labor Statistics last month, right? 2.7 million people are on long-term. They've been unemployed for quite a while. Brian Denise, director of the White House National Economic Council, said, quote, in the past 3 months, the number of long-term unemployed has fallen by 1.3 million. That is the largest 3-month decline since the Bureau of Statistics, and we talked about this before, keeping records of this, which started in 1948, I guess about 18 years after it started. There are still 1.6 million more long-term unemployed than before the pandemic. The simple answer as to why is that people are just having trouble finding jobs or are slower to commit to jobs we're unsure of. Like, for example, an engineer, there may be a job opening at McDonald's, but should the engineer take a job at McDonald's because it's available? Probably not. Andrew Steiner, a senior fellow at the Century Foundation, said, quote, with job openings still at a high rate level, the conditions for an economic recovery remain in place, but progress, finding quality jobs, is coming slower than expected, end quote. So, again, recovery is here, right? They are making progress, yet we're in the midst of the, quote, the great reassessment, end quote. That's where employees are deciding, do I want to work here? Do I want to do this, right? Which is when people really evaluate their worth as employees. It's working. We're seeing businesses increase wages and benefits across the country. Maybe people will find employment they really enjoy. So in all likelihood, this 34% of American citizens are just putting their foot down and asking for higher wages. It's either that or reinstating federal unemployment benefits. Up next, let's talk about unemployment statistics just a little more, and how maybe they don't account for everyone. ABC.net explains, if you take 12.9 million employed people and then take 626,000 officially unemployed people and add them together, you get a labor force of 13.5 million people. Those who collected the data from these unemployment stats then take 626,000 unemployed people and divide it by the 13.5 million in the labor force, which gives us, drum roll, 4.6% unemployment rate. Well, the problem with the number is that it's not telling you how many people are without work in total. It shows us what portion of the labor force is without work. What they don't take into account are the people labeled not in the labor, right? In other words, those people are also not employed. However, and you can see this on like shadow stats, however, that quote, not in the labor force, end quote, description is meant for those who are retired, full-time parents, disabled students, or quote, discouraged job seekers, end quote, which seems like they would be part of that unemployment part, I guess, the last people. The pandemic added over 300,000 people to the list in the last 3 months alone. This is the ABS statisticians, Treasury officials, Federal Reserve officials, and economists find their unemployment rate numbers. So, what does that mean? Is 4.6%, I've been talking about really the number we should be focused on? I want to pass on a question on to you. If the true unemployment number is higher than that, would you still have unemployment benefits right now? Tell me in the comments. Finally, we've got more job stats. Last story. The U.S. economy created jobs at a much slower rate in September than expected. Nick Bunker, economic research director of job placement site Indeed, which you've probably heard of, said, quote, this is quite a deflating report. This year has been one of the false dawns for the labor market. Demand for workers is strong, and millions of people want to return to work. But employment growth has yet to find its footing, end quote. The Dow Jones estimated a rise of 500,000 in non-farming work, and what ended up happening was a rise of 194,000. Big miss, right? Like 306,000? Not even close last month. One optimistic number did show that unemployment fell to 4.6%, maybe, while it has expected to hit 5.1%. So we saw a bigger drop than we thought we would. September's report, workforce went down 183,000. about 3.1 million lower than what it was in February of 2020 before the pandemic took its real toll. According to Simi Shah, chief strategist at Principal Global Investors, quote, after looking at almost a done deal, today's jobs numbers has shown weird expectations to taper into disarray. The Fed doesn't seem to need much to convince it to tapering should it begin to start to get really better immensely. But at just 149,000 job numbers are suggested, well, that labor market is further from hitting the substantial progress goal that's been expected, end quote. I want to ask you whether you think that these job numbers are accurate. Some are saying we're doing well, while others are saying not. Was the Dow Jones a bit optimistic or way optimistic in their predictions? And that's the problem? I'd love to hear your thoughts. If you still haven't applied for unemployment assistance, get a head start or a head start on the week. Apply today. In most states, it's still claim your state benefit. Federal is gone as far as the lift, but if you're filing your back unemployment, well, you'll be able to get that federal lifts in your back week. So make sure you do that. That window is closing. They haven't said when it exactly is going to close, but make sure you do that. If you're collecting back unemployment and you used your savings, just fill out the ID, do the ID me, do the best you can. Be honest and truthful, though, in filling out that application. You could still receive a backdated unemployment check for thousands of dollars. At this time, the PUA has been disturbingly closed, and unemployment benefits, well, they're not sending them out to unemployed people that are 1099 independent contractors, side hustle, freelancers. It's just not happening. They said they were going to open it, and they just haven't yet. Please keep sharing your UI unemployment benefits and PUA benefits with us from your state and what's happening there. Take care. Thanks for watching. I'm Andrew Cartwright. Love you.
You know, I've worked my off. I will die for my audience.
I don't want to be someone that they feel they can't touch.
People will call you out.
Oh, all day.
Yeah.
They call me out all day.
I can type in the search bar in Google, Raider, and then